my husband and I got married at 25, and we did some premarital counseling through our church and with our pastor. And you're talking about kind of aligning hopes and dreams at that point, but there's a lot of life you just haven't seen yet, and that's fine. Life changes you both, and knowing how to stay connected through that growth. You might be on the same road, but you might be running at different speeds, and just understanding that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're incompatible. It doesn't mean that you can't live life together. It just means in this season, we're on the same road and we're running at different speeds, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, like, you got to decide to own yourself, own your investment in the relationship. It's not that therapist's job to fix you or to fix.
So Tiffany, super excited to have you on the podcast today. And to start it off, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about your journey and how you founded Element 3 18 years ago. Let's go back 18 years.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Trevor. You are it's certainly a fun thing to wake up to this morning. So thanks for bringing the energy for sure. I'm a small town kid that always dreamed of the big city. And so after school, I went to college for finance and just dreamed of a great big corporate job. It seemed like the coolest thing. I remember watching, women that I felt like, looked fancy and powerful as a kid and thinking, man, I just want to be just like that someday. And so, you fast forward life a little bit. I worked at a Fortune 100 company in the finance department, and I learned a lot there, but I realized it was going to be a very long time before I made a decision of any consequence, probably for good reason. But that was kind of when I first realized I'm maybe an entrepreneur. I'm maybe a small company girl, because I wanted to be able to see, like, am I right or am I wrong? And so at the, sort of still fairly tender age of 24, I was a few months before my 25th birthday. My dad, the financial partner, and me, the sweat equity partner, bought a small little agency. It was under $500,000 in revenue. It was very, very, very tiny. Bought a marketing agency, and I was just kind of, I would say, naive enough to say, I think I can turn this into something. So over that next 18 years, I got married. My husband and I have 4 girls from 14 to 3 years old. All the same marriage, just took us a long time to get there. And so, now what I'm working on, this Life of And project, I have a president who runs the agency day to day. I'm still involved. I wear the CEO and owner hat at Element 3. But what I realized was that we're in this incredible moment in our culture and our society and our history where there's just an abundance of opportunity. With not very much money, you can start a business. There's an enormous amount of opportunity for women. I saw it was 1988 when women didn't need someone else to co-sign for a business loan, which I was born in 1980. So in my lifetime. So we've come so far. But yet there's this, I think, secret bankruptcy that's happening in our families and in our homes where we don't have connection. We're pursuing financial, wealth, and that's all excellent. I'm a capitalist to the core, and I think that moves a lot of our economy and us forward. But I think there's a secret price we're paying, and so, like a lot of, I think, us who now today are, moving our careers into creating content, it's kind of redeeming my own story, where my husband and I pushed our marriage really far. I pushed my relationship with my kids further than I would have liked. And so as I sought to rebuild our family culture, rebuild some of our behaviors and norms, I started to realize there's something I can teach other families inside of this. So that's kind of how we get to here today.
Okay. So tell me more about the price that you pay. All right. And what were some of those things that you said you pushed the family a little too far, and the kids, and what were some of the sacrifices that were going on that with your family, like you said, that culturally, you see in other families, but things that are going on out there. What were some of those sacrifices?
Yeah, well, my husband and I are both firstborns. And I joke when you go to marriage counseling and tell them that, they say, oh, there's a special book for, this kind of crazy. So we're both high achievers. We're both very driven. We're both just have the expectation that we're going to make a big imprint in the world, throughout the course of our lives. And so we were, and I see this happen in a lot of families. We were chasing the external more than we were chasing each other. And we were getting a lot of feedback at how amazing and excellent we are and how smart we are. And people would stand up when we walked into the room and people were waiting on us and we were leading big teams. And that was how the outside world received us. And we were not receiving one another with the same amount of excitement. So where do you go? You go to the place where people are excited to see you.
Okay. Okay. I see what you're talking about. Okay.
Yep.
So
And
you
I think
feel
with our kids, yeah, I mean, we had, we made I would say the financial choice. I wouldn't say that we could have afforded it yet, but we made the financial choice to have nannies. And so when that's the case, it's easier to be an hour and a half late. There's not this, I mean, yeah, you're paying them more, but there's not like the child care door will actually be locked and you can't get your kid out, kind of thing. I'm being extreme to make the point, but it's just work took up a lot of our space, and we did not stop to define well for one another what it should look like when we were in these two careers and when we were adding kids to the mix. And as we started to get the opportunity to serve on boards, and as we got the opportunity to lead in our church, and as like it just the bucket just kept getting fuller, and we didn't have better tools to navigate the more complex environment.
so let me ask you this. What was like the tipping point? When did it become apparent? Because as you're climbing that ladder and success is coming your way, and it can be easy to just get caught up. And it sounds like that's a little bit of what was happening. But what happened? What was that breaking point where you're like, okay, wait a minute, this is not, we got to make a change?
Yeah, it all kind of happened in 2018, where my husband and I looked at each other and said, like, we both just deserve better than what our marriage is, and so we have like a really tough path ahead, no matter what we pick. Path one is to like end the marriage and get divorced. That's hard. And path two is to try to rebuild it and to figure out, can we put new behaviors and new patterns and new ways of like can we learn to be together again, or are we, or can we not? Is it too broken? Are we too proud to do that?
I want to dive into that because you chose to stay together. It's like pick your hard, right? It's going to be hard either way, but you chose to stick it out, which I think that's amazing because so many families today, they don't, right? Like divorce is the rate of divorce is just so high. So what were some of the things that, forced you, or not forced you, but led you down that path towards sticking it out?
Yeah, well, I say I had the luxury of choosing that because you both have to want to. I have friends who their marriages ended in divorce, and both of you have to want to work it out.
Yeah,
Not
because
everybody has that choice.
yeah, a lot of times it's one person really wants to work it out and the other person's like, no, they've already exited, right, a long time ago. So you were both on the same page of like, no, we want this.
Yeah, we both wanted to put the work in, and we knew. So I think that that's sort of the first level set I like to share is like not everybody has the same chance at the journey that I have had, and I'm aware of that. At the boat the f- Once you get over that hurdle, the first is like you both have to be honest about how much it sucks and what you want. And you have to come together in a way that is probably more vulnerable than you feel safe to be, because it's like not great. You're like kind of pissed at each other. You hurt my feelings. Like you don't think like you're not that into me. Like all those things are hurtful. And so being really um vulnerable when you feel like when you feel vulnerable with that person. It's easy to feel vulnerable with a girlfriend talking about somebody that you feel vulnerable with, but doing that to that person can be really hard. So we both had to like admit this is not okay. We both deserve better than this. We're like high achievers in every area of our life. Why would we accept mediocre in the thing that is arguably the most important
Ooh,
thing in our
that's good.
life?
I'm gonna give you a mic drop for that one. Hold up. You were like, hold up. We want the best in our business
Yeah.
and everything else, but this is the most important thing, and we suck. No, I mean, no offense, but I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not
We just
good.
like
Like,
this is,
this sucks, right?
yeah, I don't even like an itchy shirt. Why would I wear, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, why would I, why would we make this something we don't want? That seems so silly. Or we just deserve better than this. You deserve better than this. I deserve better than this. Like, we've got to figure out if we can be better than this.
What was the environment like? Like, okay, so because you're going out in the world and you're grinding, and like you said, you're getting all of this pats on the back because you're so successful and you're doing all these amazing things, and then you would go home. What was the energy like? Describe the energy.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right word, is like the energy is like, uh, is that it feels dull inside of your home. I would say ours was not wrought with like a bunch of angry, aggressive, like fighting. That was not like really our flavor of conflict. It was more just like indifference.
It's
Um,
kind of numb almost.
yeah, it just was dull. It was like there was
Mm.
nobody was putting creativity, investment, excitement, planning, like all the things that, yeah, what you're saying, like we were doing in every other area of our lives. We were expecting to just like magically appear. And that was like not, it's clearly like it's an insane thing to expect. Um, but we didn't know how to make the space, or we hadn't chosen to make the space to invest in what I say, like the business of the relationship. And that is what starts to erode the like fun part, is like you stop being on the same page. And so you're not as like present when you try to go do something fun, or investing in your families. Like all those kinds of things start to get more dull when you don't deal with the business of your relationship. Where are we going? How are we allocating our resources of time and energy? What are the priorities inside of our home right now? How can we support each other? What change is coming so that we can react to that as much as possible before it gets here? Um, like, how do we manage those pieces of us so that the other part is actually fun and easy and smooth in all the ways that you imagine a relationship being?
So do you treat do you treat your relationship kind of like a business? Like, do you have like standing meetings and things like? Because I've heard of couples doing this where I actually heard I think it was Jesse Itzler and uh, gosh, I can't think of her name off the top of my head.
Sarah Blakely.
Yeah, Sarah
Yeah.
Blakely. I heard them do an interview at the 10X Growth Conference, and they were talking, and they were saying that they had like just like a business meeting, like a standing meeting, and they said they would rate like issues in their relationship on a scale of 1 to 10, and if it fell below a 7, they would table it, and they would table it to that meeting. Like, hey, well, it's not like we're just going to ignore this, but it's just not worth, like, it's not urgent. Okay. And if it was above a 7, then they would handle it in the moment. But if it was below a 7, they would table it for that meeting, and they would have this standing meeting every week to talk about issues and different things, and to solve problems, like a business meeting. And so do you do anything like that?
Yeah, we do. We have a family meeting once a week, and it is really there's definitely some logistics in it. We have 4 kids in 4 different schools, and 4 different, from 15 to 3, so 4 different stages and activity levels, and no more. We don't have any other drivers right now, so there's a lot of logistics with that. And then my husband travels fairly frequently, and so whether he's home or away, there's kind of a different rhythm to things. So the weekly family meeting is really looking at the priorities of the week, what's coming, does everybody know what's happening what day, who's picking up, all of those kind of things just allow us to enter the week without a bunch of micro solving, which can be really distracting for me as kind of the COO of our household. If I'm getting texts 3 times a day about who's picking me up, what's happening, did you remember, that's a big capacity load for me. I don't like administrative things. And so I just found we just need to do this once. And then my husband and I quarterly do exactly kind of what you were saying, Jesse Itzler and Sarah Blakely do. We have a quarterly time that we're together. We usually partner it with something really fun as well, where we both will bring topics. We build the agenda kind of over the quarter. Stuff that I see, or an example that we talked about was just getting on the same page with financial literacy with our kids. Our girls are getting older. Our oldest one is going to be out of the house in 3 years. And so What do we want her to have learned? We need to talk about that so that I can, put together a program and administer that, or, we can do that together. So that would be an example of something that's more like forward looking for our family. How do we plan well? Or it could be things like, uh, quality time away is really his love language with me. And so we're already looking at the calendar in 2025 to see when does he have like board meetings in cool places that I can maybe go with him, and putting that on the calendar first so that it's not competing with other things that I might say yes to. So we've just gotten better at those kinds of things and learning to look ahead. I think in really, really busy households, it becomes so critically important. Otherwise, the two of you are left to fit into the cracks of life, and it's almost important or almost impossible for that to happen. And so then it just ends up not happening. And when that happens over a long period of time, you end up really far apart.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think that that's you're getting on the same page, and you've got goals that you're driving towards together. You've got, like you said, the time away, something to look forward to. And when you're growing together instead of just letting life happen, and then, like you said, fitting in the cracks, right? So what kind of a difference has this made? Obviously, it's made a big difference in your family, right? Can you maybe share some examples, of that difference? You maybe paint a picture for us there.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I used to feel like our life where every year my husband and I do a marriage check-in, and we have a form that we go through individually, and then I bring him on the podcast, and we go through it kind of live, like where are we at, what did we learn, what progress did we make in our marriage in this last year, where are we still getting stuck, and how do we get better. And even that like assessment is such a valuable, we do that with our people that work for us. We sit down and kind of take stock of where are we, and what, and the gap and the gain, where are we still further away than we'd like to be from where we want to go, and where have we made a lot of progress? Where do I feel you supporting me and showing up? Where have I worked to maybe support you in new ways in this last year? So that's like very easy. It takes us maybe an hour.
It's so funny how we're so intentional and strategic with our businesses, right? Like, and even our business relationships. I mean, this is the Who You Know show. And so we're always about building relationships and connection and all of that, right? We're so intentional about it because we see, what that can do for us. But yet our personal relationships, like, your spouse, your family, things like that. It's almost like you take that for granted. And my business partner brings this up to me all the time. He's like, sometimes the people closest to you get the rawest version of you. They get the leftovers. They get you know what I'm talking about? They get the leftovers. You go home after a hard day's work, grinding it out, and your spouse gets the leftovers, the energy that's kind of just ugh.
Yeah, I think if we don't be intentional about giving them our first time. And for us, in a two career household, it isn't I mean, I talk to him every day, but quality time is not an everyday thing. For us, we found it's better episodically, and like we might go away for 2 nights once a quarter. We always take a week in November and go away. That's how we've learned. That's kind of our toolbox of minimums of what do we need to do to kind of stay aligned and stay close. And I think when you talk about, what are the clues inside of our businesses that can help us manage our homes, um, that really was what I started to see. I talked about, 4 kids. We've got one in travel sports. My oldest is like a freaking genius. She's in like chemistry clubs and music, and she's a swimmer. So we've got early morning practice and after school practice 2 days. And I mean, and I have my professional pursuits, and my husband and like the bucket just kept getting fuller and fuller and fuller and fuller. And I was like, in my business, we scale our capacity. And even seeing myself as the COO of our household and realizing it is my job to look for pinch points. In the same way the COO kind of watches the flow of the assembly line, watches the services getting created, and says, where are the pinch points? How do I engineer a new way for that to happen so that the friction can go away? And that started to give me not like, it just took off the weight of being like, oh my word, there's so much to do. Everybody's so busy. It's like, yep, guess what? I'm the COO. My job is to make sure the trains run on time. We know what track they're supposed to be on. We know when it's departing. We know who needs to take a snack, and we know what time bedtime is. So, how do I take ownership of that in the same way that I take ownership of the good and bad parts of my job at work? I'm going to do the same thing attitudinally for my job at home. And then I'm going to start looking for pinch points. How do I not allow the same crash to happen over and over and over again? We act like it is a surprise that we're going to eat dinner every single night between 5:30 and 7 p.m. Why does that need to act like a surprise? How do we put systems in place for that to be a smooth, peaceful, together moment in our household instead of one that's friction filled and makes everybody grumpier and like, coming in kind of hot? That's silly. This is not a surprise. Laundry is not a surprise. Every single day we put clothes on, every single day we make something dirty. Every single week we have to do laundry, no matter if we're home or on vacation, or it just doesn't matter, grandma's house. We have to do laundry. So these systems that are literally systemic to the way that we have to live, in the same way that like sending out an invoice, if that is a high lift operation and that takes a lot of capacity inside of your business, you've done something wrong. That's not a surprise. That's built into the way it's going to work, an invoice. And so I started to look at our household like that.
I love that. And I'm going to tell you something, Tiffany. I'm guilty of this myself. Okay. I have had a couple of past relationships that have broken down and failed. And I have to look inward and to say, where did I go wrong? What could I have done differently? How can I take accountability for the things that I've done? And I'm a driver, and I'll tell you, a big part of it is exactly that. I'm out there trying to grind and do all of this, take over the world type stuff. Okay. And again, the partner would get the last of me at the end of the day, right? And so I look at these things as lessons, because I'm single now, and I'm like, okay, where can I learn and where can I adjust, and how can I get better for my next partner that I bring on into my life? And so this is very, very important stuff, because you always wish you could go back in time and do things differently and da 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 da. But you know what? You can't. So what you can do is just learn from those lessons and figure out how you can adjust and move forward. But this is very important stuff, you know. So let me ask you this. Let's now we know what the energy was like. What's the energy like now?
Yeah, I mean our life is, I would say we live 60 to 70% of the time in the proactive, meaning like we're in 7 out of 10 weeks it goes pretty much the way we designed it. And things are pretty peaceful and smooth. It's still, a kid gets sick, a project comes up, like it's not like it's perfect. But I'd say 7 weeks out of 10, it's like, yeah, that felt great. We had the plan, we worked the plan, people got to where they wanted to go. I got to do my personal and professional things. My husband got to do his personal and professional things. We feel really connected as a family. We've got some time for friends. The house is in a way that I feel like I can live and be peaceful, and it's not just a trash heap, which does not work for my brain does not work, and I'm in a physical mess. It's very distracting for me. And so,
What kind of difference have you seen with the kids?
oh, I mean, I like last night, my nails are a really terrible shade of pink right now, because I sat for 20 minutes and let my 8-year-old paint my nails. She had this computer that her sister spilled a bunch of water on about 6 months ago, and so she was playing nail salon and checking me in. I took a fake name, and she was, telling me how much it was going to cost, and we played nail salon for 20 minutes. And that was just something I wouldn't have had, I would say, the capacity to do from a time perspective, or the attention to do from just being able to be present for 20 minutes. That's all she needed me for. It wasn't a outing to the zoo. you know, it doesn't need to be that. They just want me for 20 minutes. And so I feel like an exponential ability to be able to be present in the micro moments. I feel like we are more planful in the macro moments. Um, we ask everybody in our family each season. So like we're going into summer right now. What are your priorities for the next 3 months? So that I know from my girls, what are your priorities? And it might be, I want to have my friends over 3 times. It might be, I want to rearrange my room. It might be, who knows? It's probably silly, but that's their priority. And so how am I an agent for that? And then I also share my priorities with the family. And so they are an agent for that. There's things my girls have to do because they're in a 2-career household. There's also some amazing things in my kids' life as a result of being in a 2-career household. And we're pretty unapologetic about both of those things.
We've got your course, right? That people can go to learn how to live a more balanced and fulfilled life. Treat it like the CEO of their household. I love that. And what are some of the key strategies that someone might expect to find in that course? Like if you had to break it down to maybe a couple of items, what are a few things that they can expect to find inside that course?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I find, I think whenever it could be with a roommate too, or Trevor, you said you were in a relationship prior, is moving things from implied expectations to explicit agreements. And here's an example of that. So, in our household, most of the time I'm home in the evenings, but sometimes I have a late board meeting. I might have to travel out of town to go see a client or go to a trade show, but that's like fewer than 5 to 7 days a quarter. It's like it's pretty infrequent for me to be gone in that season, kind of in the evening, dinner time, that kind of stuff. Well, one of the things that would happen is I would get home and the house would look like a bomb went off. And I would get super annoyed. I would be like, this is so disrespectful that like I'm gone. It's like literally looks like bears went through the household. And it's like, what in the world? Like, this is not the way we live. This feels so disrespectful. I'm like, I walk in, I feel like I've got a job to do. It's just like pick up. And it just felt like everyone, like the family was flipping me off. It just like made me mad. I would come back in, I would just be a little surly. And I just didn't like it. And so one day I was like, can you guys just stop making like literally it being trashed when I walk in the house? And they all looked at each other like, what do you mean? I was like, what do you mean? What do I mean? Like there's cereal bowls in the like dining room, like the blankets that everybody uses. It's like all over the place. There's like 2 couch cushions on the floor, like your homework spread all over. Like, what is happening? And they were like, we didn't even see it. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, well, what I'd like to have happen is when I'm gone for the same level of like order to greet me when I walk in the door as it does when you walk in from an 8:30 practice, my husband when you walk in from a late flight. Like, you know how you walk in and it's like, ah, that's what I'd like to. I'd like not walk in to a job of like picking up everybody's crap. So it was an implied expectation that I had that the family was going to do for me what I did for them, which was kind of like clean things up and get it going. And they helped me, but I was sort of like a drill sergeant of like, hey, can you like blah, 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 do this? And I was like pushing all the pieces around on the chessboard instead of saying, okay, family, every single night, this is a list of 7 things that need to get done. We need to clean off the dining room table. We need to put everything in the dishwasher. We need to run the dishwasher. We need to empty the kitchen and the main bathroom trash can out into the garage. We need to wipe down the counters with the stuff that I think smells so good. And do a 10-minute pick and put, which is like literally, if you see something that is not where it goes, put it away. 10 minutes. The whole thing takes like 12 to 13 minutes to just like buzz through it. It sounds long, but when you've done it a million times, it goes very fast. So it was this implied expectation that I had that was creating a lot of irritation for me. And when I would like pull in the garage, I'd be like, I bet it's a freaking mess in there. And then I would like walk in the door and I'd be like, sure enough. And then I would just kind of like storm through the rest of the evening. And it was so silly. And so moving that to an explicit agreement that was defined for the family. This is what I mean by shutting down the kitchen and our main living space. This is the list of things. Can you do that on nights I'm gone? And they were like, yeah, no problem. We're happy to. And so now it's an explicit agreement. They have opted in. I have been clear. And we both have an agreement on what's going to happen. So is it done like 92.5% of the way I'd like it? For sure. but who cares? The point is we now all understand what happens. There's a new motion and routine for when I'm gone. And this idea of, is it implied expectation or is it an explicit agreement? We hold other grown-ups very accountable for behavior that they have never agreed to. And that causes a lot of problems.
I like this. Something I did way back in the day was that we had like a chore board, okay, a chore board, and it had the different items, the different things like that we wanted the kids to do and stuff like that, and so yeah, they would run through that chore board, and I tell you what, when we were consistent with it, and there was like rewards, you'd get like points for whatever things that you were doing, and there was like almost like a reward system that would go along with it, and I tell you what, it worked pretty well. It was very effective. Something simple like that we bought on like Amazon and slapped that thing up on the board or on the wall and went through this little chore board, and it was effective because again, it was like you said, it was that agreement essentially, like, hey, these are the things. So instead of just expecting that they do it, you know what I mean, having a list of things that they need to do, you do the same thing in your business.
Totally. Yeah. We don't ask people to just do a job and leave them to it. Another place in our household, because my husband travels a lot with this, is like we are morning workout people, but we have kids that need to get on the bus early. And we have one that needs to be at the high school by 6 a.m. For swim practice. And so you got to get up in the fours to be able to get it in, or if you want to work out at like 5:30, the other person's going to need to do some stuff. And when my husband is gone, then I've got to kind of get all that stuff done by myself. And so what would start to get annoying is like when he was gone, I would not always get my workouts in because I'm doing all the stuff in the morning. And then when he was home, I was like, well, you're home. I've been doing this by myself. But in his head, he's like, yeah, I was in like 3 time zones away and getting done with dinner at like 2 a.m. our time. And like, and so we had to be like, okay, is this being implied about what happens and who gets to do what and how many days and all this kind of stuff is causing a lot of tension. This is something we can solve. How do we get really explicit about how we support each other, about what our agreement is, so that then we just run the query, like we run the rule. We don't have to argue about it every single morning. And so that would be in another place that's like silly, but it causes there's like a big ripple effect in the day and the way that you feel, your expectations being kind of not met. I'd signed up for this class, like our kid did miss the bus, and so now somebody's got a driver, and it just becomes this domino effect of ridiculousness. And so that's another place. It was like, this is a pinch point. This is silly. If we told our 22-year-old selves that we would fight over this, we would say that seems silly. Like,
Oh yeah.
let's
Yeah,
not do that.
come on now. You ever got in one of those arguments about something stupid? You know what I'm talking about? You're like arguing over food or what to watch on, Netflix or whatever, just those silly, stupid arguments that you get into. And so what it sounds like, and I've heard people talk about this too, is to, when you have arguments, when you're arguing with your spouse, it's like, if you're trying to prove someone wrong, it's like someone's right and someone's wrong, and if they're wrong, then that hurts the relationship because you're supposed to be like one, right? Like in the Bible it talks about being one flesh, right? And so if you're two hands of the same flesh, right? Like, if I'm slapping my hand over here, well, that hurts, okay, the total being, if that makes sense. So being one person being right, it's not about being right and wrong, but it can be about solving problems. And that's the way you're looking at it from a different viewpoint. It's not about, oh, Tiffany, you're wrong because of blah, blah, blah. No, it's like, hey, here's the issue. It's about making the issue the issue. You're not the issue. It's the issue that is the issue. That's the problem. Let's figure out how we can solve the actual problem. Like let's say, as an example, if we were arguing about Netflix, right? Like I know people do, right? About what to watch or what to eat, little things, stupid things, right? Well, if that's the issue, then figuring out a solution to that. Hey, maybe on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I pick. And on Tuesday, Thursday, right? Like you pick, right? So coming up with solutions. But have you found that that's kind of what you're doing here? Is just, instead of making it against the other person, it's about, hey, no, let's make the issue the issue.
I think that's certainly a piece of it, for sure. I think it's being willing to say, if we're fighting, it's a pinch point in the process. So let's figure out why that's a pinch point in the process. And like, when my husband and I get in a fight, it's usually that we miss each other. It's like something else is the problem. Something else appears to be the problem, but it's like functionally that we miss each other. We feel like we we just haven't connected in a while, and so there's some weird thing that suddenly creates this like odd issue. And so I usually go back and I talk about in my course establishing minimums for every core area of your life. And so we have defined minimums for our relationship, like how many times are we going to go out for dinner in a quarter, how are we going to manage our our quarterly business meeting, because there's so many things pulling on our energy and attention. We have to define that. I have minimums defined for my workouts. I
So
have minimums defined.
what happens when the minimums aren't met? And have you gone through that before? Have you had a season where it's like, hey, we set these minimums, like, and they're not, like, we're not doing it?
Well, that often is what I go and evaluate is if we're in this season where we're just like quarreling and annoyed with each other, I can go back and say, have we kept our agreements with one another? And almost always it's no, we've slipped somehow. We're in a season where something was going to get rescheduled and it never got back on the calendar. And so it's like, hey, we've got to work our process. This is why we set these minimums, is because we didn't want to get here. This feels gross. I don't like this. It makes me tired when we're not connected. Like I don't like it. So can we recommit to our minimums? Let's do better. And just like at work, there's times where you're like, if you're in sales and you work on commission and you've got a quota, it's like you have all these things, like this is how many calls I need to make every day. This is how many meetings with new people I need to do every week. This is how many trade shows I need to go in any given month or quarter. And you have those behavior anchors in place because it gets the outcome that you want. You get the outcome that you want a bunch of times in a row. Sometimes you can accidentally start to get kind of lax in the calls you're making. And you get kind of lax in the number of new people you're meeting, and you hang out with more familiar people, whatever needs to happen. And then you get off your goal, and you can either go create a new program, or you can go back and say, how well have I been doing against what I decided to do? And that's really the core essence of the Life of And Academy. How do you find what you really want out of life? How do you establish insanely clear and simple minimums of behavior against those outcomes? And how do you create really simple, easy lift and accountability environment so that you know if you did the damn thing or not?
That's so good. That's so good. I'm gonna give you another mic drop, because accountability, right? By setting those metrics and those minimums that you're talking about, right, is setting that baseline. And when, like you said, in sales, when you get off track, sometimes you got to go back to the basics, right? Hey, was I hitting that many sales calls? Was I doing this many meetings? And that this is why I'm off track. And it's like you said with fitness, it's like anything in life. So let's say fitness, for example. Well, if my minimum is to work out 4 times a week, and I'm only doing 1 time a week, well, no wonder I feel like crap, right? So yeah, so having that set standard, right? It's a standard. I love that. So can you tell me, or has it ever felt like, because you handle your family life like a business, has it ever felt like work? I mean, it is work, but has it ever felt like, has there ever been that moment, or is it just all sunshine and rainbows?
Yeah, it definitely can feel like work sometimes, but it feels better than the way our relationship felt when I wasn't doing this. And so take it back to fitness, like it never feels, sometimes it feels good to get up at 5 o'clock to work out, but like more often than not, it's a choice. Sometimes it feels good. You're like, yeah, I'm ready to rock. I got 8 hours. I ate really good yesterday. My body's ready to roll. But it's
Today
what
was
you
not that day for me today,
know.
but I did it anyways,
It's
but it
good.
was not that day.
It's the same thing, you know, but it also feels like really bad to feel bad in your body. And so it's just the hard we choose, is to run our family in this way. It does not feel like the Von Trapp family from The Sound of Music with like a whistle and, you know, like a boarding school. It really looks like a very fun family, but there's this backbone that that is now a almost like a foundation for us to build off of. When that wasn't there, we were all building off of quicksand, and that didn't work. So yeah, this is like, sometimes it's, I don't want to, but I don't want to go back to where we were more than I don't want to do what it takes.
I love that. I mean, like you said, you got to pick your heart either way, and in the beginning when we started this conversation, you talked about kind of that breaking point. You were both looking at a separation, right?
Yeah, it's like it
Like
was just like,
like
it was not, yeah, nobody was having fun.
so scale of 1 to 10 on that, right? Like 10 being like it was pretty, like you're it was headed in that direction, right? Where do you think you were at that moment?
Yeah, I love this statistic. I think it's Esther Perel that says this. She says 100% of us are married more than one time, but 50% of us it's to the same person. Um,
Mm, that's
does
good.
that, yeah, it's very good. So it's like everybody is going to get there. And whether that number it needs to get to a 10 or it's a 6 where it gets your attention and you say, "Hey, this is not good." Doesn't matter. Like all of us are going to have to re-choose our partner. Um, and so it just depends on what gets your attention. Sometimes it's things like a debilitating accident or cancer or a, a, a move across the country where you know, one person grows and the other person is struggling. Like there's times we just have to re-choose each other, and that's just life. So, you know, it doesn't, I don't think the number your relationship has to get to is kind of, I just was like, oh, this doesn't mean I'm doing this wrong. This means that this is part of growing.
I love that you said that, okay? Because what you're saying is it doesn't have to be a 10 for you to stop, evaluate, and like make a change. Like you don't have to go to this crazy extreme to where you're like, we're gonna divorce, like it's over before it's like, you know, I've even thought about this. And let me know your thoughts about this actually. So, I'm single now, right? And so into the next relationship I get into, whoever I choose and whoever chooses me, we make a decision to kind of evaluate again and maybe even did you ever go through any therapy or anything like that or any kind of like couples coaching or anything like that? Uh, and my thought was to have that set in the even in the beginning stage when it's all like sunshine and rainbows, when it's when it's the relationship's at its peak, to try and help keep it there, right? Keep nourishing it, because you don't wait until the plant is dead to water it, right? You water it from a seed, right? And so that's kind of the way I was thinking, is like, hey, you know what? The next relationship I get into, maybe starting some of that very, very early on in the relationship. I don't know, that may scare her off too, though. So she may be like,
No, I mean, I think it's mature. I think especially if, you know, I think about my husband, I got married at 25 and we did some premarital counseling through our church and with our pastor. And you're talking about kind of aligning hopes and dreams at that point, but there's a lot of life you just haven't seen yet, and that's fine. You know, it's like, um, and I think life changes you both. Um, and knowing how to stay connected through that growth. You might be on the same road, but you might be running at different speeds, and just understanding that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're incompatible. It doesn't mean that you can't live life together. It just means in this season we're on the same road and we're running at different speeds, and that's okay. Um, and so I think, you know, I definitely think in my, you know, call it years like 5 through 9, there could have been seasons where my husband and I, pursued counseling more proactively in that season. And I think especially if we'd come from other relationships that had been broken, understanding how did that form us? How does that change your expectations of this new relationship? What were your conflict management tools in that relationship? And how has that informed what you're bringing into this one? I think there's a lot to unpack in that. So, and another perspective is always helpful. But at the end of the day, like you got to decide to own yourself, own your investment in the relationship. It's not that therapist's job to fix you or to fix the relationship. You have to be willing to do the work.
Yes.
And
Accountability, it's like a superpower, right? Looking inward. And again, oftentimes in relationships, we're always looking at the other person like, hey, they should do this, they should do that, right? You can't control them. The only person you can control is yourself, right? So accountability, I think, is super important. Are there any like red flags or things that people should be aware of or cautious of, right, as they're putting this thing together, like creating this business plan for their relationship? Anything that you would caution them, hey, look, you need to probably stay off of the social media or whatever, like, need to stay out of the DMs, or like, is there any things that you think are red flags, or you would caution somebody on?
I think I would just say any amount of change is progress. I think that we have massive expectations if we look at things like even silly shows like The Biggest Loser, where it's like, oh, hey, they lost 120 pounds in 120 days. It's like, well, it's possible, but that was the only thing that they were doing. And it's the same thing in our relationships. Any progress towards where you want to go is the right kind of progress. So your rate of change, meaning your expectations of like how quickly things change and exactly how fast your, spouse moves towards the person you want them to become. You don't get to pick all that.
That's so good, because a lot of times, what we feed our mind, the content and all this kind of stuff, and especially with uh some of the shows that are out there, like The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. Like I remember uh, in my previous relationship, we used to watch that stuff, and she really liked that stuff. And anyway, it was like some of it's garbage. Let me just tell you something. And it's like it sets this, like especially that show, which would set up like an illusion of the perfect person, and then also like this it shows all these toxic men and toxic women, and so then you get to see the worst of people, and then you get to see this fairy tale person. Oh, they're so perfect, and everybody wants, you got to be like that person. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, even things like the dates they go on are inaccessible to all but 17 people on the planet, and it's like, I agree with you. I think it makes these wildly outsized expectations. And that's why I said, like, yeah, any progress towards wanting to stay married to like, I wanted to stay married to my husband. Any progress that we were making towards that was progress. Whether we got there in 324 days, meaning where we were like, okay, this is the new us, or it took us 714, or it took us 32. Is there one of those numbers that's better than the other? I mean, yeah, you'd like to get there fast, but saving a marriage is a really big deal. That's like a 70-year kind of thing.
and it's I hear Glenn Lundy talk about this all the time, and I'm not sure exactly where he got it, or if he made it, if he came up with it, or maybe he got it from somebody. But I hear him talk about discipline compounded daily equals transformation, right? And so it's not necessarily, again, you can't just change everybody overnight to that perfect person that you're wanting. You know what I mean? But like like you were saying, any progress is good progress. And it's just the same thing again. Like we go back to fitness. You don't go in the gym, right? And you're like, all right, I'm gonna go to the gym and I'm gonna do 12 hours in the gym. And just you'd probably actually hurt yourself if you did that. It wouldn't be healthy. And it wouldn't do anything. You wouldn't transform. You wouldn't be, stronger. You'd probably actually be weaker if you did that. right? What you need to do is like 30 minutes a day or an hour a day, and consistency, right? Be disciplined. Discipline compounded daily equals transformation. And then all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, you look down the road and you're like, wow, hold up, I'm a different person. Wait a minute. You don't see the transformation on the daily basis, but 6 months later, you go, wow, hold up, this is good, right? So you're seeing the same types of results in your relationship.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
I love that. Tiffany, tell me about your podcast.
Yes. So it's called Scared Confident. Scared Confident. And it really is encouragement, tools, and resources for two career homes. A lot of what we've talked about today is like, how do you level up your toolbox so that you can say yes to more ands in your life? And so we talk to other two career families. I do solo shows and share kind of like live from the front lines of my own life, and answer a lot of questions from listeners. So it's a great time. Would love it if any of your listeners are interested in kind of this type of message to join me over there. We drop an episode on Tuesday and Thursday every week.
That's amazing. So you take live call-ins as well?
It's more of a form fill. I don't do live call-ins, but
Okay.
People will send in messages and we'll say like, hey, okay, this is the question that we got this week, and go into it from there.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I actually, because of the Clubhouse room, we may do a couple of questions here in just a moment. If you're cool with that, might take a couple questions from the audience, do a little live call in here. But this has been an amazing episode, Tiffany. This is very important stuff. Like it's your life, right? And again, I've been so guilty of this myself, and that's why I know how important this is, right? Like I'm ready to make those changes for my future partner, because I've made some mistakes that have cost me relationships, and it's time for that next level. So I know how important this is. I've been there where I've just been grinding. And again, I didn't treat my household like the business, or didn't treat it. I wasn't nourishing it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so anyways, lessons learned, and it's time for change. And so I really appreciate this conversation. It means a lot to me personally. And I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there. We're all out here just trying to make a buck, trying to crush it out there in the world and make an impact. And so, but while we're doing it, let's also treat our families and give the people that we love the most the respect that they deserve to, right?
Yep. I often ask myself the question, what am I willing to give up to get what I want? And if we don't make that choice, life will make it for us. So I'll just end with that.
And that's the mic drop right there. All right. Well, guys, that's the show. It's all about who you know. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Who You Know Show podcast. My name is Trevor Houston, and if you've enjoyed this episode, consider subscribing wherever you listen and leave us a positive review to help us keep the mics on in the studio. Until next week, that's the show. It's all about who you know.